2025. Let us gather together and experience the goodness of God. I'm Pastor Trey Comstock. We'll begin with our scripture of the week, 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 15a. And then Pastor Emily Larson and I will talk about scripture and more specifically, all the different and sometimes subtle ways that God cares for us. But first, a reading from 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 15a. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with a sword. Then Jezebel sent a message to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. He left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the broom tree and fell asleep. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." He looked, and there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat, or the journey will be too much for you." He got up and ate and drank. Then he went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. At that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Then the Lord said, "Go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus." This is a text I seldom pass up, right? So lectionary cycle is basically there are 3 years. There's an A year, a B year, and a C year. And so this comes up once every 3 years. And I suspect I have never picked any of the other lections across, 13 years of doing this. Because this is some of it is, as a person with major depression, it is interesting when you are seeing what really sounds to me like a biblical character suffering from at least a depressive episode.
Right, at least some major despair here.
Yeah.
He goes and says, "It is enough, Lord. Enough. I'm done."
And all he wants to do is take a nap. Like, this is one of the,
yes.
People with depression unite. Like, this is the thing we can resonate with of and this is, I guess, how you got food when you were depressed when DoorDash didn't exist, right?
An angel came and baked a hot cake on a
right,
stone.
makes a hot cake. Now at least you can, DoorDash crumble cookies. But in an era before you could do that, this is a way for depressed people to get food when you were suffering from major depression. It's like, I should die. Okay, yeah. He doesn't want to eat. He's not doing any of his self-maintenance. And all he wants to do is take a nap. It's kind of amazing. This is in the same way that, you can become pretty convinced that Ezekiel, you said you schizophrenic, bro? No judgment, but hey, what's going on, bro?
Right.
Elijah is you definitely get like a really good picture of a person, and this especially for kings, right? Like,
Right.
which is not the books of Kings. You can lump them together. They're not really separate books. They're just two. So
Yeah.
the Kings, there's just two separate scrolls. They're just longer, and so they take up two scrolls, not one scroll. And then you have the you have the scroll of the 12, where so all these little prophets all fit onto one scroll.
Right.
So it's really just two scrolls. Like, you can talk about Kings as Kings and Samuel and Chronicles, and you could just talk
all
about
the
them.
first and seconds, yeah.
All the first and seconds are really
Or actually just one big scroll. Yeah. Two scrolls.
There's just two scrolls.
Mhm.
Anyways, so the thing about Kings is a lot of it is really light on narrative. There's not a ton of, like, because a lot of it is court record stuff. This and
Right.
this and this, and like really small snapshots of really big consequential things. This person did was evil on the side of the Lord, and moving on. We don't want to read about this guy. And here King slows way down.
Personal account here of these, are like, even the leaving behind of the servant at Beersheba. So he's by himself out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
He's gone into the wilderness to die.
Yeah.
Right. He is definitely feeling some things for good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, people want him dead, He's
traumatized by what's happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
One wonders, is there, also just traumatized of what he's had to do.
Right.
Like, he's been in this quite literal pitched battle.
Yes.
He is in conflict with some of the most powerful people, with the most powerful people in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Jezebel is the queen, and she wants to kill him, and he's had to do violence, and it's all just gotten bad and complicated. This is, Elijah is being expected to do a lot. He is going through a lot. You can easily wonder, like, this is probably not what he expected his life was going to be.
Right.
And whether he is alone or not, he sure does feel it. Like, he expresses, like, we get pathos. We get, like, this is, like, well written, well described. That's probably the other part of it, right? Like, you can really read the emotions. This is surprisingly emotive writing for 2,600 years ago, 2,500 years ago, right? Like, this is, you're often left wondering, like, what are we doing? What are they thinking? And here you are getting like it's very emotional. And so I think that's the other part, is like, you can really get the sense of what Elijah is feeling. Like, in the same way, like, in the steps are like described, like, it really sounds like a person going through a major depressive episode. And for good reason.
And just ready to give up. And this is where the self-care of it's just time to take a nap and eat some cake is okay, right? Yeah. God doesn't rebuke Elijah for laying down in the wilderness and saying, okay, God, I give up, right? He just says, all right, I'm going to let you sleep, Elijah. And then, hey, wake up, have some cake. Okay, go back to sleep. Wake up, have some more cake. You're going to be all right,
And again, you're right. It's not like, hey, how dare you run off? It's not, how dare you feel this way? Much like, kind of much like Job, these are playing in a similar kind of similar end of divine human interaction. And, Job has this grand speech against God. We talk about it a lot because it's important. Theologically, it's one of those, like, it is a load-bearing pillar of a lot of this kind of understanding of, like, what do you do when it seems like it all goes wrong? And so here again, so Job has
again, Elijah is wondering, what do I do? It's all gone wrong.
It's all gone
just
wrong.
Giving up.
And probably Elijah is at least somewhat wrong, right? It is the people Elijah is interacting with. It is probably not in reality all of Israel has abandoned, right? Like that's not how people work.
Right.
You are almost never the last one.
Right. But I'm sure it felt that way.
But it sure felt that way.
I'm sure that this is where Elijah came to and said, "All right, that's it. I give up.
That's it. I give up. Like this is all falling apart. This is all, and you got to wonder. Like he's thinking, like, what else am I gonna have to do? She's like, what else am I gonna have to do here? Like this is terrible. This has all gone bad. Yeah. And as you were getting to, like, God just kind of journeys with him through it. There is definitely more that God needs Elijah to do. There is definitely, we're not yet at the bit where we're close, but we're not yet at the bit where he, passes the mantle to Elisha. Right. Like the work of Elijah is not done. And so he kind of needs to keep going. But that is not, like, the process doesn't begin with you need to keep going. The process begins with this kind of really incremental, like, okay, let me give you one more step. Let me give you one more piece. Let me give, okay.
Take a nap, eat the cake.
Take a nap, eat the cake. Take a nap, eat the cake, go on a journey. Let's go to, and this is kind of mirroring, in a way, mirroring Moses, or you should get Moses vibes, right? We're going back to the mountain of the Lord.
Going to the mountaintop.
We're going to the mountaintop. We're going to have an encounter with God. Here we get it, but here we get it described. With Moses, we just get like, he had an encounter with God, and the voice of the Lord told him these 15, these 10 commandments.
Exactly.
and we get a little bit of, like, God appears in the pillar of fire, or God appears before the people, but they all have their back turned because they don't want to die.
Right.
And here we get this really fascinating image of God that in some ways is unique, or that is really different from how we talk about God appearing in the kind of Exodus cycle
up to now, right? Up to now, it has been God's been in the fire, he's been in the flame, God has been in the mighty storms, in the wind, and now God is in the sheer silence. Right. And so just this, it would have been shocking to the reader of the time too, to see.
Most people were afraid about the presence of God, and were rightly told to be afraid about the presence of God, because the presence of God could kill them.
Yes.
I mean, and that is a thing across, like, a lot of ancient literature. Is the Greek gods, although they pop up all the stinking time, in all kinds of guises, including a swan. Even Greek mythology had this, like, differentiation between, like, a god, like, taking on a guise to be able to be seen by humans, and the god's pure form, which would zap humans,
which would kill you.
That would kill you. Like, there really was this overriding sense, and I think it's one of those ways that you think, like, the ancient mind is, like, pondering how is God different from us? Like, what does it mean to be in the presence of the creator of the universe? And again, like, we have these stories in Exodus in particular of, like, if you appear before God, you will die. And no, Moses, Moses, dog, you go do that. I'm staying out of this one because, buddy, this is bad. It's gonna go bad. It's gonna go bad for me. I fear for my life. And this, like, really kind of, like, counterintuitive poignant, beautiful. I mean, it's pretty, again, back to, this is some, you can preach, you can struggle to preach in the Old Testament sometimes, because it's just like, what are we doing? Like, why? I do not care who begat who. I know you care who begat who. I don't. Yeah. I just don't. This is, it's poignant, it's beautiful writing, and it gives this whole kind of nuanced and textured image of the presence of God.
Yes, and it almost, so it speaks to the relationship of Elijah with God in recognizing that God is not in the wind, God is not in the fire, God is not in the earthquake. But also sometimes I think there's so much that can be preached on in this scripture, but I think also just that sometimes you have to get through the fire and the earthquake and the great wind that's breaking apart the rocks, and just wait and see what God has for you. And so Elijah just had to endure a little while longer until God was there, until God was recognized. And then Elijah gets this great message from God. And so, I don't know, just being able to be so in tune with God that Elijah knew, that's not God, that's not God, that's not God. Okay, here comes God. And now I'll wrap my mantle around me and go outside.
Well, and it's also I think it speaks to that, like, the thing that we want, the dramatic, right? That we lose sight of, miracles all the time.
Yes.
Because they don't look miraculous.
Right.
And flip side of that, like, we get taken in by a less than honest huckster,
right?
When they have a really dramatic story. I back to Mike Cosper. It's always about Mike Cosper.
We just need to invite Mike Cosper on the
show. We should shoot our shot. Just like, hey, Mike, you want to come on our podcast? Because we sure do talk about you a lot.
And all your stuff a lot. Yep.
And so one of the kind of underlying themes of Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, the podcast that they just wrapped up last month, looked at like the Satanic Panic and how, like, we kind of evangelical Christianity and a lot of the nation got distracted by the fear of largely non-existent Satanists and, devil worshiping, baby sacrificing, like,
right, demonic presences that are just going to come into your living room,
right, and murder, and then you're going to get pulled into a dark ritual in the basement of a daycare. Real thing they thought was happening. That's like, all these people are killed and there were never any bodies, and anyways, and so that was like, it was really dramatic. And then a certain kind of huckster arose in that movement that claimed, like, I escaped Satanism, and when I was 19, I was holding the knife over a person's throat, and we were just sacrificing babies, and a lot of that. It was like these really dramatic stories of escaping Satanism and overcoming Satanism, and you'll never believe it, Emily, but a lot of it was lies.
Go figure.
Right, because and actually the real evil, and as Mike Cosper rightly points out, the real evil was like the massive sexual abuse going on in places like the Southern Baptist Convention. That podcast opens with this really interesting description of the West Memphis Three, who were young men who went to prison for a couple decades for a Satanist murder that they didn't commit. They've been subsequently released, but they were in jail for like 20 years longer because of the Satanic Panic. And then can you contrast that with Josh Duggar, who was, sexually assaulted his sisters and then went on and is currently in prison for possession of child pornography. And like that's not like what Josh Duggar did is not like dramatic. It's not, you know, it doesn't hit you in the, oh my God, the world, there's dark and dramatic forces. No, it's the people in the point of the podcast is it's the people in your home. It was the people in your churches that the devil was actually, the issue was in our midst, but it was super mundane, super mundane. And we love the dramatic. And so this is the positive version of that same thing. But that desire for the dramatic makes us miss, in the case of what Mike's getting at, is the negative, is that we miss the evil in our midst, because the thing about evil is the same thing about good. And this is actually a lot, like, you can get distracted by the eyeballs creatures in Revelation, but a lot of what Revelation is actually about is like, like evil is going to look like
normal,
like a lot like us, or like the Diet Coke of Jesus, like Bizarro World Jesus, like but like in the same way that Bizarro Superman is like in some ways a lot like Superman, like, you know, like the 80% there but 100% evil, evil and good both. We love the dramatic, and so often we miss the good that is in our midst, and we miss the evil that is in our midst, because we want the evil to all be the shadowy Satanist, and actually it's the, you know, it's the youth pastor, it's the brother not held appropriately accountable when he was a young person, it's the, you know, parent, it's the, you know,
the people in our midst.
It's the people in our midst. And so many miracles are right there in front of you. But they're not going to look like the earthquake, and they're not going to look like the fire, and they're not going to look like the blasting noise that can split. It's not going to split the rocks.
It's splitting the rocks in your midst. It's the sheer silence.
It's the silence. It is the calm presence in a tough moment. It is the companionship you find. It is the healing that happens in a totally scientific, explainable way, but you are not sick anymore. It's the, you know, door that opens at just the right time, and it may not be, you know, certainly big dramatic miracles happen. They do. They happen in the Old Testament. They happen in the New Testament. Like, they're out there and they get recorded because they're so weird. But I like this because it was actually like just the calmest, most normal moment is the moment that, like, after all of this big dramatic stuff, this is the moment where Elijah goes, And again, you're right. Like, Elijah deeply spiritually in tune. And so he knows this. But, oh no, this is the moment.
Well, and if you look at, you know, important historical moments in this country, it's the still small voices that made huge impacts. It's the nonviolent protests. It is the sit-ins. It is the people who did not react with violence that ended up making the biggest statements. And so it is those quiet moments. It is those times where we get to just listen, where we get to just recognize that God is present so oftentimes in our lives.
Well, and I remember a conversation I had with a friend of mine. I think this was in, like, kind of the early days of the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, I'm a white man, and I'm on the camera that can't help but make me look a little bit like a spooky ghost.
Slightly.
If you're listening to the audio version, this doesn't. But the person I'm also talking to is a white guy, and he said a thing that I think a lot of us have felt. It's like, oh, how do I be involved? How can I help? How can I do something? And there's a couple of answers to that. One of the answers is you can stand up to white people.
Right.
Like, you can talk to white people. If you are a white person wanting to know how can you be involved in things like Black Lives Matter or things like, this, moment of reckoning that we are having about the role of immigrants in our country. Like, you as a white person, if you are a white person listening to this, you can talk to other white people about it in a way so that a person of color doesn't have to. Right. Like, so the person of color doesn't have to be your introduction to all things about people of color. That is the thing you can do. It is really simple and is really mundane. But like, I didn't like what he was looking for was like, I want to be involved in some sort of grand gesture. And the only advice I could give him was like, yeah, you can like talk to white people and like you can be different in 10,000 small ways.
Yes.
Right.
Like, in the everyday small ways.
Right. Like marching, you might be able to march, but you're not going to be the one handed the megaphone. You're not going to be the one handed the microphone. You're not like, you are not like, this isn't the place where you get to lead. This isn't your story. I mean, it's why, like, when I'm working with Reconciling Ministries Network, like, I'm like the press guy, I'm the organizer guy, I'm the talk about policy guy. I should not be the face of that movement as a man married to a woman, right? Like, that is not, it was my anniversary a couple of weeks ago, right? I've been, married to a woman for 16 years. Like, I'm not the face of this. This is not, but it is like, a lot of how all of us can be a part of changing the world. Another way to put it, that of like, all of us can be involved in the movement of God, is recognizing the 10,000 small ways that we can be different than overarching society. And yes, also you can march and make really funny signs. Funny signs do help, actually, because
they make a difference.
Well, they make a difference because it draws social media attention. We saw this with the No Kings protest, whatever, week and a half ago or week ago as we're recording this. Because
lots of fabulous signs.
One of the things that that gives that movement attention, positive attention, is make a funny sign so that you're a part of a news CNN rundown of visually appealing signs. And that's like really small. Again, they're not handing you the microphone. You're not throwing a brick at ice. You're not becoming the star of the internet for a day. You're like talking to other white people. You are holding up a funny sign. You are being a background participant, because being part of the mass of a mass movement is really powerful. And these are, but again, like this, I view this as like God moving within us to be a part of transforming the world. But a lot of that is not,
it's like, not the fire and the earthquake and the wind. It is the small, it is the still, it is the just getting on board with the movement of God.
Like one person gets to deliver the "I have a dream" speech. He did. It was amazing.
It's fantastic. Yes.
Like movements need leaders too, but odds are it's not you.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
Because that you are still being a part of a movement and transformation, because what we can resonate here with is like a lot of what's really powerful is also sounds to our human ears shockingly small and shockingly simple.
Right. Or is found in sheer silence.
Right. And like, if we are back to the constant question, the question of theodicy, where is God in our lives?
Yes.
Like, we're watching God show up and even when the angels are like helping, it's in like super mundane ways. It is here is food and water. Here is food and water. Yep. And he doesn't feel that much better. It also is just like, and you healed. No, it's like he doesn't even feel all that better for a while, clearly, because we get to the final conversation and he's like, it's still terrible. Yeah, but you're moving around a lot better than you were, aren't you? Yeah. Yes, you are.
But you had the energy in you to make it to the mountain, which is where you needed to go next, right?
And all of that is small and mundane and simple. And we want the dramatic, and we
Yes.
want the, earth splitting, and we want the heavens to open and a light to come down, and these things do happen.
Right. And that's not outside the realm of God's purview, right? God still moves in that way when God so chooses. But
those things happen not that often.
Right.
And actually, then we get into like, oh, where's God? And what is God doing? But like, God is moving in all of these 10,000 boring, small.
And recognizing those things, those everyday God moments, recognizing those times when God has shown up in the advice of a friend, in that crumble cookie that was DoorDash to you just because, in whatever it is that has brought you comfort, that has brought you sustenance in your time of need, that is also God showing up.
I mean, I think about, and I've told this story before, it's on my mind because it, happened precisely 19 years ago yesterday when I turned 20, because I am not 40, I am 39. Yes, this was 19 years ago yesterday. I've told the story of like the birthday present I got from a fellow pilgrim that I got from Helen, this 80-year-old Danish pilgrim. And it is, the least expensive, birthday. It was just like I don't mean this derogatorily. It was just like a cheap keychain. It was just like a cheap, like Santiago themed keychain. Santiago de Compostela is like full of tourist shops because every pilgrim wants, things and whatever. Right. And so she, bought me a really cheap keychain. And it was just in, the bag she bought it in. Mm-hmm. And she handed it to me. And this is one of the, most special birthday presents I've ever received. And I have gotten some nice stuff over the years, and I'm thankful for that stuff too, but it was the like, oh, this is like tiny, but there was so much power in that super tiny gesture. And like, she normally, Helen had walked the Camino a number of times. At this point, I've forgotten how many. That woman's just powerful. Again, this like, 5 foot nothing Danish lady, in her, like, seriously in her 80s, and walked the Camino a bunch. And so she had like a routine, and she routinely threw a party for all the people that she had met along the way at a particular restaurant that she liked. And I got invited to that party, and that party transformed a little bit into a birthday party for me, which is like, but again, but like only in the way of like Helen made sure that in the course of that, we recognized it was my birthday, and all these people sang me happy birthday. And these are all like really simple gestures that meant a lot to me and helped make that moment was that whole journey and arriving in Compostela. I planned it so that I'd arrive on my 20th birthday. And this was like this really, like, it's been a hinge point in my life. And I kind of set out hoping it would be a hinge point, or at some point on the Camino, I hoped this would be a hinge point in my life. And it was. But I didn't, a lot of my stories from the Camino are really boring because the heavens never part, and it was, the real transformation is the friends we made along the way. Like, this is a cliche, but it's true.
But it's true. It is true. It's about the journey. Life's about the journey. That's the other cliche, right?
I've been reading Lord of the Rings. This has come up a lot in my preaching lately. Reading Lord of the Rings with my son, and like, this is also Sam and Frodo, right? Like, a lot of the story, what's beautiful about the story of Sam and Frodo is like, how does the ring get to the mountain? How does the ring end up getting destroyed? How do they get there? And there are grand battles, but that Frodo and Sam witness, but that's all in the first book.
Right.
And for the next 2 books, most of how the ring gets to the fires of Mount Doom is a loving relationship between a man and his gardener.
Yep.
That's it. Like, and like, and these are the bits I skip through in the movie because it's just like, the movie is just like, oh great, I can go to the bathroom now. Sam and Frodo are on, because it is like it is so boring. It is so boring. And and I am obviously imagining a loving marriage between a man and his gardener, because that's I don't know that that's in Tolkien's mind, but it is absolutely one of the most romantic relationships in all of
one
literature.
of the best romances ever.
I would take Sam and Frodo over Romeo and Juliet every day, because the thing you can't imagine is Romeo and Juliet growing old together, and the thing you can see clearly is like Sam and
Frodo,
like it's Sam and Frodo, like you can understand of anyways, I love them. But they're really boring. They just and so like I want the Battle of Helm's Deep. I want a man tossing a dwarf across a gorge. I want on the fifth day, look to the east. But that's what I want. I want the drama,
the big dramatic, yes.
And
but
that
actually,
helps.
It's the everyday between the man and his gardener,
right? Because actually, what I'm realizing now in this read through is, all of that, all the stuff I like about Lord of the Rings is actually just like to keep the eye distracted.
Yep.
Because the thing that matters the most, like, those guys could fail. All
and
of
it wouldn't
that
matter.
Could fail.
Yep.
And the ring might have still gotten to the fighters of Mount Doom.
Yep.
Because it was actually about the utterly mundane and beautiful, loving relationship between a man and his gardener.
Well, and in the most unlikely hobbit, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not the warrior, it's not the big fancy scholar, it's not the wizard, it's the hobbit, it's the everyday man.
And that again, I'm subtexting a beautiful marriage between Sam and Frodo, but the power of every one of Tolkien's grand points is the power of everyday goodness.
Yes.
That both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is, it's the constant refrain is, oh, you halflings are stronger than you think. And it's just a bunch of people who, really just like Frodo and Bilbo are the oddballs because they long for adventure. Most hobbits are like Sam, and Sam ends up this utterly pivotal gardener. Right. Because just out of his ordinary goodness, the world,
which is where the line comes of, if more people valued good food and wine and cheer and gardens over gold and whatever, then the world would be a better place. Yes, it's the everyday.
So it turns out that what we have decided is that the sheer small voice might well be your gardener,
Hobbit.
Right?
Yes.
We have, but yes, right? You can this is God takes on the role not of. And then certainly we have stories where God takes, obviously Tolkien had read the Bible. He's also best friends with a very important theologian named C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis, yes.
If you see marks of King David and King Solomon, okay. Yeah. And so, yes, the Bible has its Aragorns. It has,
it's Gandalf's. It's got
short on Legolas's, though, of which we need to work on that. We need cool elves. But, there are the grand people. But I think there is real connective tissue of the point that Tolkien's making and what the point that this scripture's making. That is, but actually how the ring got destroyed. Actually how the world changes. Actually how most of us experience God's love.
Right. How God actually shows up a lot of the time.
Is Sam.
Right.
It's, Sam cooks Frodo a rabbit.
Yep.
It is, Frodo says, I'm going alone. And he says, I know, Mr. Frodo, and I'm coming with you.
Yep.
Right, it's
the power of that presence. Yes, right. Absolutely.
It is that. Anyway,
we could keep going.
I could keep going. I'm not preaching, which is probably good because at some point we are going to reach the limit of Lord of the Rings related sermons that I am capable. Not that I'm capable of writing. That's not true. That my congregation is capable of hearing,
of tolerating from you. Yeah,
so
that might be true.
Okay. that they got one Lord of the Rings sermon in the way that they got one Star Wars sermon, and how last week ended up being a Lord of the Rings sermon is because I couldn't do another Star Wars one.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Like, anyways, if you have thoughts, actually, if you have Lord of the Rings thoughts, I'm here for them. The goodness of God pod at gmail.com. That is the goodness of God pod at gmail.com. We are the Divine Provisions Co, by the way, and we need your help. Yeah, this episode's coming out on a Friday. It normally comes out on a Tuesday, because we've been fighting massive technical issues that at some point we are going to need to spend our way out of. And so if you would like to be financially involved, we probably need to spend about $1,500 in the next kind of 6 weeks. And so if you would like to help us, we would really appreciate it. There is a laptop that we need to buy. There is some network infrastructure, our podcast subscription, our subscription to Acast, our podcast provider comes due early next month, because we'll mark 2 years of the show. And that's how it's the annual plan. And so if you would like to help us, go to divineprovisions.co, click the donate button, and help us out financially. We love doing this. This is ministry. Ministry, a lot of my life is ministry costs money. And so if you get value out of this and want to be a part of helping this ministry continue, of course, you can like, comment, subscribe, share, leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. Those things help this work go further. That also helps us become more sustainable. But specifically on the financial side, we need to raise about $1,500 in the next 6 weeks. And so if you would like to be a part of making that happen, you can go to divineprovisions.co and click the donate button. If you like what you see and want more of it, there's a bunch of short form content. We're going to be making a new Cut the Crap sometime in the next month. When we all exist in our normal spaces. You can find all of that at Divine Provisions Co. on most things. Are we that on TikTok now?
We are that on everything now. Yes, at Divine Provisions Co.
We are Divine Provisions Co. everywhere that you're going to find us. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Divine Provisions Co. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord. We'll see you next time.